review Week 8 of 150 Max. For our co-founder Brian, I'm here. I'm Moose from Occupy Fantasy at Occupy Fantasy on Twitter, occupyfantasy.com. You can find me on Twitter at CFB_Moose. To my right, I have Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy. How's it going, man?
What's up, Los? I am doing great. Lots of stuff been going on. Been really busy, and didn't lose all my money this past weekend. So gotta be look at it from a positive point of view.
Yep, absolutely. And you and I were talking before this, and we got a lot of data from. I've been on my grind the last week or so. So next 150 lineup review, we're going to have a lot more data analysis. Got a couple charts, some distributions I want to show you guys. Should be really, really neat. Going to help broaden the 150 max lineup review for other people. I know we do that, on a couple one-offs here or there, but I think it'll be a great talking point. So I'm excited to show you all that next week. But
Yeah, that's gonna be super interesting because we go through my lineups here. We go through the winning millionaire makers lineups and his exposures. We go through some field details what most people in the millionaire maker are doing.
mhm.
But yeah, taking a look at this accumulation of data through 8 weeks as far as what people are doing, what the 150 maxers specifically are doing. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, should be awesome. So if you're new around here, if you're watching this on YouTube, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe, like button. If you're here on Twitch, go ahead and hit that follow button. Show us some support there. Either way, you'll get notified of when we go live or upload a video. If you're here in the chat, say what's up, say hello. Want to give a shout out to our top monthly cheers: Miller Park Drunk, number one. Number two is Festival, and number three is Neffers. And if you're here in the chat, if you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. We'll be here for about an hour doing the $1 million mission. So go ahead and stop us if you have any questions, comments. Brian, do you want to let them know what the $1 million mission is?
Yeah, and I just wanted to make another quick point about the top cheers that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 days left in the month of October. So the top three cheers will get a portion of my total earnings, not profit, total earnings in next week's week number 10. This is week 9. So week 10's FanDuel Thursday million. The top cheer will get 1%. The second cheer will get a 0.5%. Number 3 cheer will get a 0.25% of whatever I return. So big upside for the cheers. In addition to letting us know that you're thanking us for what we do, we appreciate that. I'd like to give it back in that manner too. So yeah, so this $1 million mission, we do this every Tuesday night here on Twitch Live, upload it to YouTube after. Really, I am 150 maxing the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. I'm also doing it on FanDuel, but because we have more data for DraftKings, that's what we show.
Mm-hmm.
I am attempting to win the $1 million again, won it back in February. And so this is a way to be transparent, talk about my process, and really help people with mass multi-entry. Now, we know most people at Occupy Fantasy do not do this, but we have partnered with DFS Magic, the lineup builder, which allows you to build up to 150 lineups for NFL. It will soon allow you to build 150 lineups for NBA with direct import from the Occupy models for both sports. So really, this is a time for us to talk about 150 maxing and exposures and how to enter these large field tournaments, because even though it's a daunting task, like we've said in the past, there are 5-cent 150 max tournaments, so people can practice this for as little as $7.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome, and my bankroll is at to the point where I can 150 max the pooch punt, which is something that's pretty awesome. 750 is not going to break really anybody's bankroll. Good start. Hopefully, I can get it up to where I'm 150 max in the Millionaire Maker. So to start out, let's take a look here. So we have the logo. Let me go ahead and get that off. We'll talk about how you did last week, if I can find the right picture.
Yeah, and while you do that, we have some activity going on in the chat. Jordan, who is a very new follower, so shout out to him. Thanks for joining. He says, "Do you remember?" Yep, we remember you. So welcome.
Yep. Welcome, bro. Always glad to have you here.
And then BKSA, longtime follower, just subscribed with Twitch Prime. Subscribed for 2 months. So BKSA, we appreciate you. And as he says, glad we started the chat on Discord. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, if you are a Twitch subscriber to Occupy Fantasy, you can do so for free if you connect your Amazon Prime account and choose us to use your subscription. You get access to our Discord channel, which members can talk to each other about DFS. We'll do some scheduled Q&As in there from time to time for Occupy staff. Really good time in there.
Yeah, no, and like yesterday for the Sunday night slate, Monday night game, some news broke, and people had questions like, how do we analyze this? And kind of, it's like it's a positive vibe atmosphere. Everyone's there. We're trying to build off each other's energy, trying to figure out best way to go ahead about it, and then throw the occasional memes in there every once in a while. So, no, I really enjoy it. We have scheduled Q&As. We talk about other sports. Really, really fun. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get access to our Discord channel. And I see Miller Park saying that he's came so close to the pooch a few times. I really like the payout structure there, 500 to first. Really a lot flatter than some of these other makers contests you have out there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we talk about this every week, and it's no surprise that my ROI is in the negative. The DraftKings Millionaire Maker is one of the worst structured tournaments in DFS. And as we've explained to new follower and Jordan in the chat, GPPs really are the biggest bankroll drainers. Mm-hmm. And I've had some conversations with other members as well. It's just you have to make sure if you are 150 maxing, if that's a path you want to go down, you have to make sure that because of the variance in GPPs, because of the variance in most sports, mm-hmm. that you have to make sure it's a very small fraction of your bankroll, like 1% of your bankroll per max to GPP. Because if not, you can very easily, I've tweeted out multiple times this year, there was a stretch where I've gone 30 slates in a row without winning. These showdown slates are miss, win big, and then a bunch of misses again. So if you don't have careful bankroll management, you're going to go bankrupt.
Yep. And so, got the image on the screen here. So for your Week 8 DraftKings Millionaire Maker, $24.20 in entry fees, $19.95 in winnings, minus 18% ROI. You did have 29 satellite tickets. I see here, it looks like Nightbot accidentally timed out Miller Park drunk. It says couldn't post links. Yeah, Nightbot's really weird about that. You might have to put like spaces in between the periods to do that. But so minus 18% for the week, and then year to date, 18.9K in entry fees, 12.6 in winnings, minus 33% ROI. So not bad considering like what the top, what you can get. Not necessarily just $1 million, but in terms of you hit pretty good and you hit that 10, 15, 20,000. That's putting you right there in 100% ROI.
Yeah, that's what I'll need for sure. And again, this is just the classic Millionaire Maker. It's not including any showdown slates or anything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it goes to show how top heavy the payouts are. I really haven't, there was maybe one good week I've had that I feel. But even on weeks where you're average, you look at this week's Millionaire Maker, 176,000 entries. And it's really nuts, actually. You can beat 158,000 people and not even double your money. And you just think about it from that perspective, how hard it is to be profitable in this tournament. It should be no surprise to anyone that I have a negative ROI. Yeah. And again, it just really re-emphasizes that GPPs are #tough.
Yeah, it's crazy. Miller Park clarifies that he was trying to post a link to the pocket change info for FanDuel. And that's where if you finish the top 1,000 of those contests, you earn one entry into that pocket change. I think the winner of that gets a trip to Puerto Rico. So hopefully Miller Park can get the trip to the to Puerto Rico.
That'd pretty sweet.
Yep. And Jordan with the question, he says, "What's the most you've won on a single slate this NFL calendar year?" That would have to be your $1 million on the Super Bowl, right? This calendar year.
This calendar year, I guess. Yeah, this calendar year for sure. If he means this 2019 season that just started back in August, I guess it was a preseason win for 25K. Had two, a 15 and a 10K win in Showdown. Both were top 10 finishes in that massive Showdown DraftKings GPP. couldn't get the push over the edge for the top prize. So aiming for that.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Yep. So great questions, Jordan. Yeah. And again, guys, for those who are watching, if you have questions, go ahead and ask them. We'll be here another 45 minutes or so, going over reviews. So take a look here. If you look at the very top, you'll see Brian scrolling top 10 leveraged plays. And let's go ahead and let's take a look at them now here. And as we have, Oakland players, top 3 of your most leveraged plays were Oakland. That game was pretty awesome.
Almost really close to being really awesome.
Yeah, almost close to being really awesome. So why don't you kind of take me through? I know you stacked that game, but what was kind of your process on that?
Yeah, so if you watched any of the previous week's editions of the $1 Million Mission, I tend to choose 3 games per slate to stack in my 150 lineups. So, and generally, I'll distribute those pretty evenly. So if there are 3 games I pick, I'll do 50 lineups for one game, 25 for one quarterback, 25 for the other quarterback in that game. Do the same thing for the other 2. This week, I really, really liked the Houston and Oakland game, and I actually weighted it a bit. So I actually ended up doing 60% of my lineups strictly for that game.
Okay.
And then 30% for Detroit and the Giants. Both those games I really loved. And then this final Tampa Bay and Tennessee game, I liked a little bit, and I wanted some exposure. So I ended up doing 10% of my 150 lineups stacked to that game. But the biggest reason for me, twofold, for that Oakland and Houston game was, one, the total was high and it increased like 4 points since the lines opened. So I really liked that. And 2, both quarterbacks in this game were expected to face very little pressure. And as we've talked about many times, we talked about it specifically on the Saturday stream, specifically about this game before Sunday's games, that both these teams wouldn't be able to get pressure on the opposing quarterback, and that should allow the quarterbacks sit back in the pocket, find open receivers. And we mostly saw that, just some fluke touchdowns, and we couldn't get a couple scores in the game to really push that game towards a blow up spot.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of times where it seemed like it was underperforming in that game, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. So Jordan has a question. For this Thursday night game, who are you captaining? That'll be in the plug. I'm sure once we get our thoughts together, right in the plug, we'll have a better outline.
Yeah, so it's still Tuesday. I haven't taken a look at it too closely. I know that San Francisco is a pretty big road favorite in that Thursday game, and I think for low risk lineups, we'll end up having a ton of San Francisco guys. But in high risk contests, I'm going to continue to touch the hot stove, so to speak, and play against the projected game script. So.
That was pretty bad when you saw like Miami doing that tank defense play. Was it third and 15? Let's just do all out blitz and have people 20 yards off the line of scrimmage from the receivers.
The game was going so great in the first quarter, and then it felt like Miami had the ball for about 6 plays the rest of the game. So
I know they went in halftime like, oh shit, we're still supposed to lose this game. I forgot, and it just.
I swear to God, it just felt like they never had the ball. So lineups went from being really awesome to pretty poor by the end of the night, though.
Definitely. So all right, so with that game, let me go ahead and move this screen over a little bit so you guys can see the leverage plays here. There we go, the leverage count. And then, so some other plays that kind of stuck out for me for top 10. That New York Giants game, Daniel Jones was a top leverage play for you. He was only 1.6% owned by the field. You had him in 16.7%. The Giants game was another game you stacked, obviously. Again, tell me about that game. That's I stacked that game as well, but at first look, that kind of didn't really seem like a good game to stack.
Again, it was another high total game. Total was moving up. Neither team projected to get a bunch of pressure on the opposing quarterback. There were a couple of receivers who were underperforming the recent opportunity. Running backs who could and theoretically should have played in the past game, looking at you, Ty Johnson on the Detroit side, Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram at tight end. Really like that game. Game's potential to shoot out, and so that was another reason I picked them. And having Daniel Jones as 15% leverage or whatever it may be, it's going to happen if I stack a game equally, and the quarterback's 2% owned or whatever. So I don't look too much into quarterback leverage. It's really the positional players where I think you can glean a lot of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, uh, any position players that you want to talk about? I know we talk about kind of like the Achilles heel of mass multi entering, and with wide receivers, it's so tough. We first talked about don't pick anybody under 10%. Then sometimes you do have to pick people over 10%. Like Marvin Jones here as a part of the stack. But kind of tell me through your process on picking wide receivers this slate that weren't a part of your stack.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on Saturday. If not, we definitely talked about it in the DFS podcast last Wednesday. That I generally I'm looking towards receivers that are lower owned,
Mm-hmm.
that have potential to break out, mostly due to them having tons of opportunity in recent weeks, but not necessarily converting on that opportunity. Looking at target shares, air yard shares, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty long list this week. Mike Evans was near the top of the list. And I made a concerted effort to try to get him into more lineups. I used the DFS Magic lineup builder for these 150 lineups, and I had to manually go in and make sure to get Mike Evans in. I want to say 12 to 15%. Does that sound right, Moose? Is that how much I had him in?
You said for Evans, let's
Yeah.
see. You had him in 13%.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, so I wanted to get him in there, and then a couple other guys you'll see on this list: Brandon Cooks. Uh, who was the other one? Oh, Chris Conley actually went off. I had him in like 14 or 15%. Anthony Miller was another one who was a couple plays away from having a big game.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a better week for those guys. Not all of them are going to hit, but when they do hit, like Chris Conley at 0.8% ownership, you can really get a leg up.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, and that's where it can definitely shoot you up the leaderboard. Speaking of stuff like that, let's take a look at the winner really quick, because I thought it was really interesting for him. Let me pull that up here, and we have Nam saying, take a look at his lineup. He did have that New York Giants stack: Daniel Jones,
So fucking close.
Galladay, Tate, Ingram, the four game stack. How many entries did he have here? Let's take a look. No,
Yeah, obviously the big difference maker for him was Tevin Coleman, who scored 4 touchdowns. And not saying he got lucky, but I was looking at some data today, and I think Tevin Coleman was expected to score 13 or 14 fantasy points, and he ended up scoring 40. So big help to that dude.
yeah, and so looking here, he did have 40 entries, 49 players. Tevin Coleman was in 20% of his lineups, which is
Pretty good leverage.
yeah, so 8 lineups out of it. His high zone plays, 97.5% of Latavius Murray. And, we do talk about this a lot with these, the high owned running backs. If they definitely fit the value, they're high up in the occupied model, whatever it would be. And sometimes you do have to just say I'm going to bite the chalk on running back and go overexpose on them. So if when they do blow up, you go higher up in the field than they do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sunday morning I really got into Latavius Murray. I was like, I need to get him in a lot of lineups. I think I put him at 40 or 50% on FanDuel and at least 50% on DraftKings. And in hindsight, I probably should have made it a ton more. You know what? Just fuck everybody else. Just make Latavius near 100%. But yeah, so that's something I still struggle with. I have these running backs that I really like. I think I should try to get them super leveraged when I have the ability to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, taking a look at some of his other players, I guess it looks like he did a lot of I don't want to say off the like random players, but
It looks like he
um,
did have a lot of that Tennessee Tampa Bay game stack. It looks
yeah,
like.
Tennessee, Tampa Bay, yeah,
What was his winning lineup again? Can you go back to it?
absolutely. So if we take a look here, Daniel Jones, Tevin Coleman, Latavius Murray, Mike Evans, Kenny Galladay, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, DK Metcalf, and of course Patriots defense.
Of course, Patriots defense. So he did a 3-by-1 stack: Daniel Jones, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, and then ran back with Kenny Galladay on the other side. Pretty solid lineup here. You gotta like it.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I liked his lineup. Um, let's see, what was I going to look at there? Yeah, and when I was following the game, basically if Cleveland scores anytime during that last period, he drops down and number 2 guy takes over for the millionaire maker. So that had to be a huge sweat for him.
Oh my god! And yeah, that number 2 guy also had, I think, DeAndre Hopkins, and he just needed one more yard for the bonus.
Yep.
And
Oh no,
uh,
he did get the bonus.
oh, he did. So, but he literally needed two more points, right?
Yeah, 1.9. So catching a couple yards. Um,
Damn.
looking at the second person's lineup here, he had Matthew Stafford. So quarterback from that New York Detroit game crushed. Paired up only from that game. Only Galladay it looks like. So
Yeah, just a single quarterback receiver stack.
and then he had 2 people from the Tampa Bay Tennessee game.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
How many lineups? How many lineups did he enter in total?
Let me take a look here. So he had 2 lineups. It looks like.
Wow, beast.
Yeah, 2 lineups. If this thing loads.
But as you'll see, he had 100% max. I don't know if this guy, I know nothing about this user, but you know, he didn't try to hedge too much. He at least has some guys in 100% of his lineups, in both lineups.
Well, yeah, I mean it's tough with 2 lineups. It's really hard to hedge.
Right, no, for sure.
Um, so the players he had in both lineups: Tyler Lockett, Denver defense, Kenny Galladay.
what a feeling. 2 lineups into the millie and finishing second. Not a bad return.
Absolutely. Take a look at some of the people who did 150 max it. Anyone you have in mind you want to take a look at?
Um, let me see. Just go to. Can you sort by 150 max? Let me see. Let's do. I mean, let's look at Osimo. We know he is a top ranked player.
Yeah. So one thing that stuck out with me with Osimo is, it was weird. Normally again, I'm not trying to be negative towards anyone. It was just an observation that I made. He did way more players than what I believe he normally does, and his max player was 91% Latavius Murray.
Damn.
I guess it goes back with the overexposed on chalk. If it hits, it hits.
At running back for sure.
Yeah, running back. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Definitely not doing that for wide receiver.
Yeah. How many total players? 106 total players. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd, Michael Thomas, Chris Carson. Interesting. Yeah, interesting selection of players. What about? I was going to say Papa Gates, but we need to look at 300 lineups to get a sense there. What about Mock Lovin, MOKLOVIN?
Mark Lovin, MOKLOVIN. He did 20 entries.
Oh, so he didn't even do the 150.
No. And his max player Latavius Murray, 45% owned, 10%.
I think this should really show people, like, if you have a running back that is in a great spot and is underpriced, if you're maxing tournaments in NFL, you should really, really at least match the field and probably go over on them too.
I agree. Let's see. And then if we take a look here, let's take a look actually at your best lineup, which we talk about several times. Isn't really doesn't really tell the whole story, but still is cool to see nevertheless. If you look here, your top lineup had that Tampa Bay Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, Leonard Fournette, who like if there was an air yards model for running backs, Leonard Fournette would be on that buy low list. Every week he would break it.
He has 1 touchdown on 198 touches this year.
Which is great. I know he was so pissed when after that goal line stand. That last.
It wasn't even a stand; it was bullshit. But yeah, you're right. He was pissed.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's gonna have a 3 touchdown game pretty soon, and I'm gonna continue to use him, and especially when they're favorites for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you'll see here, this lineup was very close to being pretty big. Scored 202 points. I think the winner had 250, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If I go Cooper Kupp instead of Robert Woods, this adds another 30-some points to this lineup. If I don't use fucking Corey Davis than literally any other receiver, that also looks pretty good. But this shows the volatility in receiver matchups, because Tampa Bay is considered one of the best matchups for wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Davis was coming off a pretty big game. and he put up 2.9 DraftKings points. So this is the volatility that we talk about embracing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. Um, yeah, it sucks to see everyone in that Tampa Bay Tennessee game get. You have Mike Evans with 45 points, Ryan Tannehill almost hitting 20 points, and then Corey Davis, like the only person who didn't really do anything in that game.
Yeah.
Well, what did surprise me, I guess maybe because it was the weather, but Julian Edelman only being at 2.5% ownership, really shocked me there.
Yeah, that was definitely a weather-related ownership, I think. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, always end up with him, and 5 or 10%. It seems like the model always has him rated as a top 20 play. So
Hmm.
always finds his way into some of my lineups.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now time for the more tilting part that we always talk about. If we look here again, I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but this screen that we're on, going over the lineups, that is from Fantasy Labs. It's their contest dashboard, which is free on their website, fantasylabs.com. Great resource if you're trying to do some back testing. You want to see exposures for different contests. Definitely go ahead and check that out. One of the other things they do have here is a salary distribution tab. It shows how many people and what percent of the lineups use a certain percent of salary. And you see here, basically 46%, almost half the users use all 50% of their salary. That is a little bit higher than normal. I think last week's was 44, but still shows a lot of people really try and go for that 50,000 mark.
Yeah, and again, it is the same conversation every week. If you are using correlation, you're playing low end receivers, using the entire $50,000 salary cap is not a big deal. Showdown, single game slates is really where you want to differentiate by leaving salary on the table.
Mm-hmm.
In classic slates, assuming it is more than 2 games, as long as you're using proper lineup construction and game theory in high risk contests, it really shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be using really less than 49,500.
Mm-hmm.
$500 below, and even then, it's kind of stretching this because, as we know, most of the time these player salaries are pretty sharp.
Yeah, no, I mean there's a reason why most people get to that $50,000 mark. It's because it is
Right.
the lineups are rather sharp.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. So, and then the other part that Fantasy Lab shows is duplicate lineups.
yeah, let's see it.
It would always suck, man. Imagine if you had like if you on a main classic slate, like if you didn't use an optimizer, you built your own lineup and then you tied. I'm sure
Yeah.
that would not be fun.
Uh, it was. I was telling someone today. So actually, the first like relatively big GPP that I won, the FanDuel NHL GPP, it was like 2,500 players,
Hmm.
and first place was 12K. But somehow, in that on a 10-game NHL slate, someone else had the same exact lineup as me.
Wow.
So I ended up splitting the top two prizes. But uh, yeah, that's still just incredibly rare for that to happen. So when you see 237 people having the same lineup, here is an example of likely an optimal lineup being spit off from a lineup builder that multiple people subscribe to.
Yep. And so at this one, it shows, ooh. So again, it had Latavius Murray. That probably drove up the ownership as well. Um,
Uh,
I will say though, it is nice to see that the optimizer doesn't put in another tight end at flex.
Congrats to that optimizer.
Yeah, not really seeing any tight end here going into flex. But yeah, seemed to only really be these three, really two big lines. There's one user who put in 149 entries of the same
Why?
lineup, um, and then two big ones. 237 users putting in 245, and then 124 put in 128, and they look to be kind of different.
Yeah, certainly a little different. Let's see. Let's see that second one.
Not not too different, but still different enough.
Yeah, I imagine it's still from that same. I mean, we have the same kind of setup every week where we have
Hmm.
one lineup that's used by a lot of people. We have a second lineup that's kind of similar that's used by a little bit less people. So, don't know what the source is on this, but it seems like the same builder is building this and people are using it. Which I don't understand. Like, why would you enter the same lineup as 225 other people in any contest, let alone the million?
Yeah, yeah, that would be kind of wild to see if that actually hits one day.
God.
I know it came close a couple weeks ago, But you know,
It
if you,
did.
yeah, imagine splitting the $1 million 245 ways. That would
Like
be
a
so.
fucking showdown slate.
I know, right? And then lastly, what we like to look here is this position usage. This shows how many people used what position in flex. I guess people must be listening to this stream because only 9.5% of people use tight end at flex. Uh, 47 at running back, 44 at wide receiver. Obviously, a lot
Nice.
less than what it has been, but still way too high for tight end.
Yeah, about 9.4% too high. But as we've seen before, this number was like 15, 16% in recent
Hmm.
weeks.
And that's because
I don't know.
that's because we would go to the duplicate lineup and you would see it do. You would see people play two tight end plays and hashtag not good.
Yeah, that must be it.
Taking a look here, I see we have BKSA who cheered 110 bits. So shout out to him. I appreciate that, man.
gets him into the third spot. So with 2 days remaining, BKSA is paced for 1/4% of my GPP earnings on next Thursday's NFL single game slate. So see if that holds.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, shout out to him. Shout out to all the people who are top cheers, and even the people who aren't top cheers but still cheered. Shout out to the top gifter, Miller Park Drunk, who's gifted 1 sub. If that's what you want to do, you can go ahead and do that.
He gifted it to me by accident, which was the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Stupid ass Twitch.
That's all good though. Um, all right, so we don't have any questions really. Is there anything else you want to take a look at real quick? Or
I don't think so. My strategy on FanDuel is a little different this week. Actually, you know what? I've done this 2 weeks in a row now on FanDuel where, um, you really have to score touchdowns there.
okay.
And you can't get by. Like on DraftKings, you can game stack and a second player, or even like a lower game stack. Guys can hit value with that receiving bonus, the 100-yard bonus to
Yep.
catches, not score a touchdown and still be in the winning lives. FanDuel, that's really tough to do. So I actually dropped my stacks on FanDuel this week to just 3x1s.
Okay.
3 guys from one team, one from the other. And I used just 2 game stacks I was really confident in. Games where I thought there would be a lot of touchdowns. That was Houston and Oakland and the Giants and Detroit. And I was, just a very small minus ROI there. And I think I'm going to continue that strategy moving forward on DraftKings because of the PPR and the yardage bonuses. You can continue to 3x2 stack, and it's the most optimal.
Yeah.
On FanDuel, I think 3x1, maybe even 2x1 is the better play.
Yeah, I mean, again, just because what we thought has happened to be the most optimal strategy, things change, things happen. So, you know, you have to be willing to have your eyes open and be accustomed to new research.
Yes, definitely. And in fact, a lot of the backtesting we did was for DraftKings, and we had some data on the side from FanDuel that we looked at more recently. That's kind of telling that story about 3x1s being more optimal on FanDuel.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So, if we don't have any more questions, let's run ahead. Let's run the DJ Khaled quote. He said another one. I didn't really help out any. But all right, yeah, let's do some plugs before we get up out of here. So if you like what we did, if you're watching this live, you like what we did, go ahead and hit that follow button. You'll be notified of when we go live. If you're watching this replay on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you get notified of when we upload new videos. Occupy Fantasy Daily Plug for the Thursday night slate will be up Thursday. For the main slate will be up on Friday. Occupy Model will be updated Thursday for Showdown and the main slate. NBA still kicking strong. College football still going strong. If baseball's your thing, we got 1 or 2 games left. Go and check that out with our model. OccupyFantasy.com membership as low as $2 a week with the annual membership. And BKSA with the 440. Yeah, he's trying to get that. He's trying to get up there. He is still in third place with 550 bits cheered. Huge shout out to him. Yeah, if that's your thing, if you want to support us that way, you can cheer bits.
Appreciate that, BKSI. Thank
Yeah,
you.
really do appreciate that. Yeah, if you want to follow us on Twitter, Occupy Fantasy is where you can find it. You can follow me at CFB_Moose, Brian at Brian Jester FF. I will say real quick what I have been posting, and I'm expanding the way I'm doing this, especially for these showdown slates. I don't really see too many people post ownership splitting between flex and captain. I did that yesterday for the free roll, the quarter jukebox, the main GPP, and a $180. I think it was called the deep slant. But it was really really awesome to see the ownership across the sharper and higher buy-ins. It was something that I think we all can learn from. I post that on my Twitter at CFB_Moose, so you can go ahead and check those out there.
Yeah, by looking at, in general, there are sharper players and higher buy-ins. Just in general, there are going to be some rare exceptions to that. But when you look at ownership from a $1 tournament compared to a $1,500 tournament, it really gives you a sense of who the sharper players really think are the best plays compared to casual players. And you can learn a lot by doing some reverse engineering and kind of taking a look back at slates after they conclude.
And I will say that, just thinking of yesterday really quick, you saw the backup quarterbacks were like zero point 0.1 or like 0.05% owned, which isn't a lot, but compared to that higher buy-in, where like literally zero people had them.
That's smart because,
Yeah.
back in the day, and I say back in the day, I mean like 12 long months ago, backup quarterbacks were priced pretty cheaply, and Baker Mayfield actually won somebody a GPP in single game when they played the Jets on Thursday night, and Tyrod Taylor left early. It's because Baker Mayfield was priced down as a backup. Now they're all priced at 6 or 7K on DraftKings, and there's really not a ton of upside to rostering those guys. So that makes sense that the sharper players have picked up on that.
No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. So without further ado, any last words, Brian?
I think we covered most of it. So yeah, just subscribe if you're watching this on whatever channel. We're putting out more videos on a daily basis on both Twitch and YouTube. So if you have any feedback about them, what you'd like to see, definitely let us know.
Awesome. So with that being said, Moose, Brian from Occupy Fantasy, have a good night.